Hello everyone, it's Linda Ockwell-Jenner here again with another Conversations with Linda video podcast show. I'm very excited today because this young lady is a prominent local figure, and basically I've been following her around for years, seeing her at lots of events. I'm very excited to have managed to get her on my show tonight. So Karen Redman is a Canadian politician who currently serves as the chair of the Region of Waterloo. Hello, Karen.
Linda, it's lovely to be with you.
Thank you so much. And I know you've had a busy day today because I saw something on Facebook. You were, I think it was a local event where you were welcoming dignitaries here. Am I correct?
Well, today I celebrated a 100-year anniversary of the Preston Legion. And then I was at a neighborhood barbecue. Part of our community safety and well-being plan is a program called We All Belong Here. So they were having a backyard barbecue in a big social housing complex. So it's been a very good day.
You have very busy days. So thank you for all the work you put in. One of the reasons I wanted to connect with you on the show is to find out more about your path to your career, which I believe you've got many milestone moments to share with us during your time as chair. And I think that's from 2018, if I'm correct.
That's right. I was elected in 2018 and then again in 2022. And I have to say that I've been very fortunate, Linda, and I never set out to be in public life. I've always looked at elected office as public service, and sort of started out wanting to advocate for people who I thought may not be able to advocate for their children in the education system the way my husband and I could. So it really was about bringing voice to those who may not have as much success in a bureaucratic system as we found we were able to have.
So how did you end up where you are then? I mean, this is quite the story.
Well, I think that I have been the lucky recipient of being in the right place at the right time and deciding whether or not I would enter through a door of opportunity. So originally I ran as a trustee. We have 4 children. They're not quite 5 years apart in age. So I spent a fair bit of time as an at-home mom. And when our youngest son went into grade 1, I decided that I would throw my hat in the ring as a public school trustee. And I would have to tell you, I will always say that good public education is a hill to die on politically because it's the great equalizer. It provides opportunity and people are able to realize their potential. So I started out advocating for other parents and then went to ran for city council as well as regional council, and I did that for a term, and then I was offered the opportunity to run for the Liberal Party at the federal level, and that was a really hard decision because we had our oldest daughter actually was at the University of Ottawa in first year. We had 3 kids in high school. I have a happy life. I have a husband who has his own business. We had a dog, so life was pretty good. But this just looked like such an amazing opportunity. And I want to share, I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and my middle sister is always the overachiever. She has recently retired from being a nursing professor. She married an American. She lives in Rochester. And I was talking to her and my other sister about this opportunity to run as a member of parliament. And my sister said, say no. You can say no. It's a perfectly reasonable response, but know that if somebody else has that opportunity, it will go to somebody else, and they say yes, are you always going to look at that and go, what would I have done with that opportunity? And that gave me the permission to say yes. So my little pearl of wisdom from that learning, Linda, was when people are at a crossroads, usually in their professional career, but sometimes personal as well, I say, walk around for a day or two and say, yes, I'm going to do this. And just think about it and convince yourself you're going to do it. And then take a day or two and walk around going, I'm absolutely not doing it. And these are the reasons why. And I think by the end of that exercise, people kind of go, oh, yes felt right, or no was absolutely the right decision. So that was my big lesson in that part of my life.
Wow. And we're not even halfway through this. So I know you said yes, didn't you? thankfully, because you did a lot of good work there. Do you want to share a little bit about how you juggled, being a wife and mom, and probably lots of other things, and being, a member of parliament?
Uh, it was a bit schizophrenic because you have a life in Parliament. I had the opportunity to be a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Environment, and your job in that role is really to marshal legislation through the House. Later on, with Paul Martin as the Prime Minister, he tapped me on the shoulder and I became the Chief Government Whip for 5.5 years. And that was a great learning experience because I worked daily with the whips of all the other parties. So always realize that while politics is a group sport, you had to reach across the aisle. So that was a great learning for me and really a dynamic time. Like I really, really enjoyed it. And then I would come home and I would have constituency work and catch up with my 3 kids that were still in high school. And when I talked to our daughter who was at the University of Ottawa, I said, what would you think if I came to Ottawa as a member of parliament? And she said, Mom, it's absolutely shameless what some mothers will do to follow their kids around.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. It's a really good one, though. She sounds adorable. And I guess your husband took on a lot of the brunt, did he? Or was he still busy with his business?
Oh, he still was busy. We had a housekeeper for a while that would do the house cleaning and the laundry. But I started buying him Mother's Day gifts at that point in our relationship because he was Mr. Mom too. But yeah, it was great. It's a balance. I miss soccer games, violin concerts, school plays, and I lost out. The kids still had full and happy lives. So it's always a balance. And I often say to young women, I would never have given up being a mom. Like it's something that I always wanted to do. And I still, we now have 4 grown kids and 5 grandkids, and it's amazing. Linda, do you have grandkids?
We only have one, unfortunately. The boys don't want any, and this will be our only one. My daughter was diagnosed with secondary breast cancer after a breast cancer diagnosis. And it shocked me because I had breast cancer twice and it hasn't happened to me. So we're advocating now for more awareness about this and for the Canadian Cancer Society and places like that to tell people about it because a lot of people don't know it can happen. Melissa's was de novo. So it was already there, but nobody knew it doesn't show up. So she was stage 1 breast cancer, but because of my history, she went through all the operations I did. And it didn't manifest himself till she noticed something a year later, and there is no cure. And Karen, this is the only way you can die from breast cancer with secondary breast cancer. So we're trying to be as loud as possible. We've been to Queen's Park. England's very up on it, and so is Australia. So our one grandson, Lucas, will be 6 in July. Our world is the most amazing little darling. And Melissa also, like you, is a working mum. I was a stay-at-home mum in England, so I feel blessed. And now that my children are grown, I can do more of the things that I didn't even know I could do years ago. But when I emigrated in 1993, I would look at people such as yourself and think, wow, whoever was in at that time in Parliament or in the local council, and I would think, that is such an amazing thing for them to do. And then as my children got off my hands and I started my first business, we learn by watching how other people do it. And failure is not really a failure, it's a learning experience. And I have seen you at so many events and wanted to grab you and say, please, will you be a guest? But you are so popular and busy. So, yeah, we have one grandson. And you have the 5. So all going to be good little people. So how long were you was it called the Chief Whip? Is it called the Chief Whip?
Yeah, Chief Government Whip. I had a Deputy Whip, Dominic LeBlanc, who is now on the news all the time dealing with the United States. And it was wonderful. And one of the things that I really tried to do to my role as whip, because you have carrots and sticks, right? You're the disciplinarian. But I remember at one point in time, there were 2 men from Toronto, and they had teenage daughters who were going through eating disorders. And I just said to my staff, everybody doesn't have to know their business, but I would say to them, if MP X or Y says they need to be away on a Friday or they need to go home halfway through the week, they have my permission. And it was that kind of trust and credibility that I tried to build up with members of my own caucus and members, the other whips. And I would have to tell you, it was interesting because as the whip, one of the other things we do, I know I mentioned this as being a parliamentary secretary, and that was environmental legislation. But we look at the agenda coming forward in the House of Commons, and it's our job to get it through. And because I was government whip, I clearly had an obligation and an interest in getting government legislation through. And my other whips would either say, we're putting nobody up this time, we're putting 5 people up, or I can't tell you. And all of that was a message, all of that was a signal. And it was that kind of honest interaction that I had with the whips of other parties that really helped push the legislation through. So it was a very, very satisfying time of life, but it was also really frantic. And what I like to say to young women is, yes, you can have it all, and there is work-life balance, but it's temporary. And there are days, quite honestly, Linda, the wheels fell off and nothing was going right, and that was just the way it was. So you pick yourself up. And I remember when my kids were little, I used to think I had a really good day if at the beginning of the next day I ended up in the same spot, right? Like if you got all that stuff done. So being a mom taught me a lot of life lessons that I used as whip. Listen to people. I remember after I was defeated, I had a colleague that took over as whip, and he had been a hockey coach, and he said to me, Redman, how did you do this? I have people come in. I have guys come in and they sit on my couch and they cry. What do you do? And I said, that's why you always have a box of Kleenex and you listen to them. So it was a great job. And I don't think my kids suffered. They're all great people. I think I lost out a little bit on their lives during that busy, busy time. But
I think being a mom doesn't mean you have to give up your life entirely. I get a little bit annoyed when people say, I've lost out because, I had 4 children, not me, but people in general had children. I wasn't, able to enjoy life because we had the children too early or something. And I say that's not true, because as humans, we go through life forever changing our lives, and whatever choices we make, like you've said, we have to be happy with it. But I don't feel that I was held back. I mean, some people would say to me at the school gates, oh, you must have like a vegetable for a brain because, I gave up the job as a secretary in insurance brokers. But I learned so much through my children. And like you, I don't think my children suffered. They suffered after a divorce, no fault of my ex-husband's. It was, sorted out properly. But I didn't have enough money to pay the bills, so I had to work 3 jobs. That's when I felt like I'd let my children down. But like you, Karen, they say to me, no, you were a wonderful mum, and our dad was a wonderful dad. Did you have problems with men, though? Because a lot of women in the techie industry now, because Dave's a cybersecurity guy and he'd love to hire more women, but he finds that a lot of women don't come forward for the jobs. And I hear a lot of things about this glass ceiling, but I don't think you ever found that a problem, or did you?
I didn't really, but I would have to tell you, there has been a huge shift during my career. I've been very lucky, and I've been doing this a little while. And I always felt that I was treated credibly, but I also felt, appreciate that I started out in 1988, and I didn't find it so much in local politics. But when you get to Parliament, Linda, I was a lifeguard. This is my analogy. I was a lifeguard all through high school. And everybody wanted to get their credentials and they wanted to be a lifeguard. And then when you're a lifeguard, everybody wants to be head lifeguard. And that's a little bit what Ottawa was like. Like there were lots of colleagues that were auditioning every caucus meeting, which was every Wednesday morning when we were sitting for a role in cabinet. And I went to Ottawa thinking, if my only goal is to get into cabinet, and that's the brass ring that matters, I'm going to walk away bitter, because we all can't be in cabinet. And when you make a cabinet as a leader and a prime minister, it's geography, it's gender, it's language, it's cultural diversity, it's all of those things. And so I went in thinking I wanted to do a really good job for my constituents, because again, I still thought of this very much as me serving my riding my constituents. And I would work really hard and try to be the best whatever. And I remember one time when I first got there, I was put on finance, and I asked Paul Martin, I said, why did you put me on finance? Really, I'm an English major, so the only thing that I have as experience is what I have learned through being a city council and a trustee and a regional councilor. And he said, you bring balance. So I've never been afraid to ask the silly question, the question that you go, and I can't tell you how many times I'd ask a question and people go, I was going to ask that, but I didn't want to sound stupid. So, but there was a lot of competition from other women. And I think it's because there had been a quota system and people figured, well, if there's one or two spots, I want it. Instead of, keeping the ladder up to break that glass ceiling or keep the chair next to you warm. And I think there's been a shift in that. And I think that's really, really healthy. And I think of Jane Stewart, I think of Anne McClellan, people, Shaughnessy Cohen, other MPs that were seasoned when I got there. And I remember Jane Stewart once saying to all of the women members in caucus, if I can do it, you can do it. So there was a sense that if you have a problem or you hit a roadblock, come to me. So I always felt fairly treated by men and women and taken seriously. And that was really important to me. But I always realized you have to do your homework. And generally speaking, and I'm not disparaging my male colleagues because a lot of them were wonderful, but you have to work harder and be smarter.
That's true. I've heard that a lot. But at least try, see that there's a job available and say to yourself, even though I'm a woman, I know I can do that job. And don't think immediately, well, I'm not going to have a chance. Because people like my husband and a lot of the people in the tech world do want and value more women, in this industry. So I'd just say to them, do what you did and, work hard and give it a go, at least apply. So I guess once you weren't the chief whip, what was the next step? I mean, this is lovely for me to hear all this.
So I was chief whip, and then I was whip when we were in opposition, and Stéphane Dion was our leader, and very, very bright guy, but tough times and hard to go from government to opposition, because opposition, you're generally just very, very negative, and that's not my natural approach to life. I was defeated in 2008 and then asked to go back by Michael Ignatieff and a colleague, former colleague, Paul Zed, to be the caucus liaison person. So I went back for a year and a half and worked in the leader's office. And that was very instructive. And I used to say I would never spend the time going to Ottawa if I couldn't throw the snowballs. But when you're staff, you make the snowballs. And it was very engaging again. And lots of while I was no longer a member of Parliament, a lot of the people who were members of Parliament were people who I'd already dealt with. So I found it enriching and gratifying. And I ran again in 2011 and was defeated. And I would have to tell you, and you mentioned this earlier about failure, but you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. I got to say, winning is a whole lot more fun than losing. What I learned was you lose, you think your world's ending, but the sun comes up the next day. Your friends are still your friends. Your best friends bring you chocolate, by the way. And I have this amazing family. So I went on to be CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Waterloo Region, for 7 years. I found that incredibly gratifying as well. But I also said to myself, am I done with politics? Because I had done it for a while. And I decided that regional level government was the level of government that I thought made the biggest difference to my family, to my community, to the shape of the future of our community. And so Ken Sealing is a very close friend. And I went to him and I said, Ken, if there was a job I wanted, it would be yours. And he sort of swallowed hard and said, well, I'm going to run again. So I ran for a seat as a Kitchener representative. And then that was 2014. And 2018, I ran for chair.
Brave woman, especially telling the guy. The thing is, I think what it is about you, your personality, your authenticity, Now, you wouldn't believe I used to be shy. I really did used to be shy. I didn't even like talking to people at school, or helping with school because I was really, really shy. But having breast cancer twice, and my life changed forever. And I guess I stopped being shy and knowing that I could help people when I had to go to Sunnybrook for my treatment and stay in the lodge. There were many people who were worse off than me, and that gave me food for thought. But if I hadn't have had breast cancer twice, I wouldn't have started my first business. And basically, then I also realised that people like you and myself don't just think about ourselves, but we think about other people, and they seem drawn to us, don't they? Because your personality, I've never really seen your personality at an event where you're talking to people. I was at the Sustainable Waterloo one, not last year, but I think, and you were there, and everybody wanted to talk to you, so we didn't have a long chat, but no wonder you were like a dynamic leader. Everything you've done, you've got this dynamic personality, but also you're very authentic, and it's not just about you. I know that for sure just by talking to you now. And this is a good message for everybody out there, isn't it? Especially the younger generation who want to get into politics. You said something very interesting. You were there to serve your people who'd voted you in. And I'm not knocking anybody at all, but sometimes I think people forget that and then go off a bit and do something different to what we wanted. And I know it's difficult because it's about everybody being involved, but I'm sure you did it wonderfully, and everybody who voted for you was so happy that they'd made the right decision. Do you have any regrets at all?
I don't. I would have to tell you that I've always made the same two promises my whole career, and that was I would tell people how I voted and why I voted, because I spent a lot of time every week coming up to speed. Mike Murray was CAO of the Waterloo region when I first got there in 2018, and he used to say to me, "Which way do you want to be wrong?" And it was very instructive because I will never get 100% of the electorate. And as a matter of fact, I don't want to date this, but I mean, I'm not running for chair again because the province in its wisdom has decided that they are now going to appoint. So I have put my application in. I was going to run again. My husband has a steel business, and I said to him, "Are you going to retire, or should I do this one more time?" And he said, "Are you kidding? Who's buying a steel business at this time, with tariffs and Trump and stuff?" So I was going to run again, so we'll see how that pans out. But I think you have to be honest with the public. I have never needed the job, Linda, and I have to tell you, when you talk about working 3 jobs, can I just say how much I admire that? And what an example you had for your children and their friends is that, hard work gets you where you need to be. I don't know if TED Talks are quite sort of the rage that they were, say, 10 or 15 years ago. Everybody has turned into podcasts, as you have. But I used to think that if I was ever going to do a podcast, I would want to talk about ambition in women and how society treats that versus ambition in men. Because I do think there's a bit of a double standard. And again, I mean, I think you have to do your homework. You have to demonstrate to yourself and others that you can do the job. But I think ambition, I saw that in politics. I mean, I was a fan of Sheila Copps. She got called all kinds of names and because she was very ambitious. And
It's a shame.
yeah, it is, because her male counterparts, had the same ambitions. And yes, you sort of come into conflict, but yeah, I have no regrets, Linda. If I was going to say one thing, sorry, and I feel like I'm going on and on.
No, this is amazing. Please carry on.
When I was a member of parliament, I was elected under Jean Chrétien. I had dinner with Jean last January, and he's 92 and as sharp as he's ever been. He's just amazing. And I said to him, serving with you is a thrill of a lifetime. And he sort of punched me in the shoulder, because that's what he does. And he goes, "I trained you well, Redman." Or Karine. He always calls me Karine. But when I was elected under Jean Chrétien, there became this fight between Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien as who should be our leader. And when you look back, it feels ridiculous. We had a majority. It was a good time to be a liberal. We were coming back from the brink of disaster financially, a large part due to Paul Martin and how he was handling the finances. And everybody was divided into camps. So we're all liberals, but you're either a Chrétien loyalist or a Martinite. And Paul called me in again. I was on finance. I knew Paul. We had a good personal relationship. And he said to me, "Why aren't you supporting me?" And I said, "Because, Paul, 8, 10 years from now, when you've been prime minister, it's going to be people like me that are covering your back. And so I will not slag my leader, and I will support you when the time is right." And I think that's why he tapped me on the shoulder to be whipped, because he figured I was honest, and I would protect his back.
Thank you. Again, I will say that we're very alike because I know this sounds a bit rude. I don't think we are sheep where we follow people because we want to be popular, we want to be liked. We listen to our hearts, our instincts, and our thoughts. And if people have supported us, why would we just drop them? And also, I don't think you've been scared to say, "I don't know." Well, you did say it, didn't you, about finance? And that's another thing I found in my early days when I was trotting around saying, "Hey, I started a new business, I don't know much." The Small Business Centre, many local businesses said, "Well, we'll help you." And I think honesty, if we're feeling unsure about something, and also loyalty are the two things that keep me going and why people like me, thankfully. Not everybody. And that's another thing. If people don't like me, I'm not here to be popular. And I feel that's your strength, isn't it? Unfortunately, when you're in politics, you have a worse job of it than I do. So I just wish everybody would just get on well together in the world, not just in politics and business, and support each other. And that's what I'm hoping, this chat with you, this conversation will open many people's eyes, for women and men alike, because authenticity, loyalty, honesty, everything that you portray, I really admire, and I'm sure you've helped many other people, not just me.
Well, you're very, very kind. I mean, I would say, and I said earlier about politics being a team sport, and there's very few people, and but there are very few people you can find common ground with. And that's where you find that that intersectionality where while you don't maybe agree on 80%, there's 20% that you could work in common cause with, and that's what moves things forward. You met my dog earlier, but we carted her away. But I used to say to people, I've had jobs in my professional career where I felt the whole world hated me, but I had a dog, and every time I walked in that door, that dog wagged her tail. So that was enough to complete me.
I love it. I love it because, again, politicians in particular get a bad name, and we often judge, I'll say we, the whole world, judge people before we know them. So one thing I always say to people, you can't really know someone because of what people say, what people do. You've got to build a relationship. It's very important in business. But I can't thank you enough for your time. The words of wisdom that I shall take with me, let alone my listeners. Thank you so much for your time. I really admire you, and I hope we get to meet again. And there's our baby doggy. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure. Thank you.